most of the homes were destroyed where we were living. I think we probably slept on the streets for about a month, I want to say. But again, as a child, for me, it was like, oh, sleepover. We're all sleeping together now. We don't have to say goodnight and see you tomorrow. We're all sleeping on mattresses on the floor, sharing the same food. It would be interesting if I start to write things down to see how much I could remember. I don't know how emotionally that would affect me. I think it has some impact in my adulthood. But again, as a child going through it, you don't see the danger of it.
So I'm going to give you a special introduction. Haven't I known you since you're like 13 or 14?
I got here to the U.S. in 1990. I had to ask my dad about that. So I was 14.
Okay, we'll go with that. We'll go with that then. That sounds good. So, one reason that I really wanted to have you on the podcast, Marisol, is because, you have been such a hardworking person, such a goal-focused person. And when people learn about all the stuff that you endured as a young person, I think they gain much more appreciation for who you are now. And we want them to learn about that. And in addition, I love the focus you have on animals now, on like fostering animals. Could you go back to that story of when you were a little girl in El Salvador? Because I think it will resonate a lot, especially with the situation people are hearing about in Eastern Europe and the war. Can you tell us how it was to be in that situation?
I think when you're a child going through something like that, you don't see the danger of it as an adult. You just go with it. As kids, I think you're so resilient, or like I said, ignorance, right? Because you're innocent, so you don't know how bad it is. But in '89, so I was 12 when the Civil War happened in the capital in San Salvador, and I was living with my auntie at that time and with my brother. My parents had already immigrated to the U.S. At the school that I went to. I mean, I could just walk to the school. All I know is that, military started to show up, and I haven't gone back to really what it meant, but I know it was just this, really bad time for San Salvador. Things started to get really bad to the point that people couldn't leave the houses. If you had to leave the house, you had to leave with a white flag. But my aunt, she had to go in and do the grocery shopping because we had a little market. She used to sell the basics, eggs, milk to the neighborhood. So they would come in, to our house and buy little things here and there. So she had to go to the market all the time. So she would leave the house. We would stay behind. Other than that, I mean, we couldn't leave the house. As little kids, you're always trying to figure out what the adults are talking about. It was bad. I mean, people dead on the streets, the smell of just dead people decomposing their bodies, dead people everywhere. I remember there was a time that I was hanging out with my brother at the front porch, and there was this younger man that was running down the street, and he was holding, I want to say I don't know if it was his little sister or his daughter. In my head, I want to say it's a little sister because maybe I related to my brother and I, but he was running, and she was just, it looked like she was passed out. And it looked like she was, she had gotten hit by one of the bullets, stray bullets. It impacted me because it was scary to see that. And there was another occasion that me and my brother were hanging out again, because that's what we did. We didn't have anything else to do. We heard something, and it was a stray bullet hitting the wall where we were. I just remember ducking, and then we were just like shocked. It was pretty scary, but at that moment, it's kind of like, oh my God, what's going on? The one time that I was very scared was one of the nights that we heard this big airplane. They used to call it, I want to say that they called it La Tortuga, which is like turtle. I don't know why they called it that way, but it was supposed to be this huge airplane, and it was just dropping bombs to the cities where they were trying to get the guerrilla out of the town, out of the cities. So they were just bombing. And at this point, I mean, civil people are, at risk, right? I don't think it was close by, but it sounded like it was above the roof of our house. And I remember just hiding underneath the bed that I wished that my mom was with us. As a mom now, as an older person, if I was going through that now, I mean, I would be really scared for my children.
Wow. And I think I recall you telling me the story of when you were actually that 12-year-old girl and you were like taking a shower or something. And then there was like, was there an explosion or what happened?
That was the earthquake that happened in 1986. So I lived through that as well. It was one of the biggest earthquakes that El Salvador had. It destroyed a lot. It destroyed our house. It was midday and I was taking a bath, and the bathroom was in the patio. It was just how the construction was made, I guess, on those homes. So I was taking a bath, and all of a sudden I heard something like a big, explosion or something. It sounded like really loud, like a roller. I didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden, just things started to fall. I had no idea what was going on. And then I remember my auntie calling me. I think I blocked out because I don't remember anything else. The next thing I knew is that she was trying to get to me, but the hallway had a lot of debris because one of the walls had already collapsed. Most of the homes were destroyed where we were living. I think we probably slept on the streets for about a month, I want to say. But again, as a child, for me, it was like, oh, sleepover. We're all sleeping together now. We don't have to say goodnight and see you tomorrow. We're all sleeping on mattresses on the floor, sharing the same food. It would be interesting if I start to write things down and to see how much I could remember. I don't know how emotionally that would affect me. I think it has some impact in my adulthood. But again, as a child going through it, you don't see the danger of it. I keep saying adventurous because I think you want to look at it from the positive way versus the negative. You have that innocence as a child. As an adult, you're constantly thinking. I mean, I find myself as a mom now always being paranoid about things, always thinking the worst, like if I move to this area, what's going to happen? I must have felt scared at some point and, had fear, but it was more like, oh, okay, we'll just roll with the punches. We'll just
Mhm.
keep going, see what tomorrow brings.
Eventually in 1990, like a year after that heavy war experience, you immigrate to the US and you get to your father's home in California, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about this too much because I feel that it is a little bit embarrassing for me, but it is the honest truth. I didn't, we didn't come here legally. We didn't come here in an airplane, with a green card or a visa. My parents had no choice but to, hire someone that would bring us over by, car, bus, walking. My brother, had to jump in the trains at nighttime. We left El Salvador, across Guatemala, Mexico, until we finally made it to California.
How long did that take? I mean, your brother wasn't too much older than you, was he?
We're 3 years apart. So if I was 14, so he was about 17.
So you got this 17-year-old and this 14-year-old just going through these countries alone.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much with strangers, just hoping that we're trusting in these people that got paid. We got separated because just that's the way they did it because he was a boy. He was a male and older. So he got put together with the men and the older crowd because I guess I was a female and I was younger. So they put me just with a mom and her son. I remember there was this guy that he was the one in charge to keep us safe and transporting us all the way through midpoints. They made it look like a family just, going through town, just traveling. So it was easier for me. For my brother was a little bit more rough until finally we got to the border. My brother got arrested by immigration because he was a minor. Immigration had to call the border patrol. They had to call my dad. So they called him, and then my dad was in California, and he drove to San Diego or LA and was able to get him out. And then for me, my dad had to kind of figure out where I was, because for them, if someone gets caught and gets taken to jail, then they don't pay them. You kind of lose your payment for that because you didn't do your job. So they were still trying to kind of keep me hostage, if you
Yeah.
want to call it that way. But my dad was quick enough to figure out how to get my brother, and he went and knocking on doors. Yeah, in the middle of the night, he knocked on the door, and I heard him asking for me, and I just ran out and my dad just says that he remembers this little girl coming out with, the hair all messed up, looking like, I don't know, a homeless girl. So they couldn't say, no, she's not here.
Oh my goodness. That sounds almost like Underground Railroad stuff from the 1800s. That's amazing.
I mean, it was. It was. A lot of these things, I don't necessarily share them because for me, it does feel embarrassing because nobody wants to say, oh, yeah, hey, I got here, illegally, as some people, refer to wetbacks. You never want to be called that. Technically, I mean, that's how I got here. And eventually, my dad was able to get us legally, we got our green cards, and now I'm a citizen, paying my taxes and working
Mm,
hard to earn my money. I want to say like it took about at least 20 days. I think
okay.
that's what they said, that it was going to take about 22 days, 20 days.
Incredible. And did you have regular meals during this time or like changing
Oh,
clothes or
okay.
what?
So I do have to say, one of the stops that I made, that was the first time that I tried some real tacos, Mexican tacos. It was the best tacos ever. I remember just like, oh my God, these are these are some good tacos. I've never had tacos before, so I didn't know, but it was so good. There were other times that not so good. It was some tortillas that I had never had because the tortillas that in El Salvador we make, they're different than the Mexican tortillas. It was new to me. I don't remember complaining about the food.
That's one thing that'll be news to people. There's a lot of people listening to this podcast. They'll be like, what? A Latina that doesn't know tacos? But I mean, Salvadorians is the cuisine is different, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's an amazing story. So it's like, okay, now we got you on the United States side, and I got a chance to watch you do a lot of your growing. But, a question that may be in people's minds is like, your English is great now, but did you know any English when you came out running to see your dad?
Not at all. Oh my God. And it was so traumatizing for me learning English. And yeah, of course, now that's all I speak or Spanglish. I find myself speaking Spanglish. And sometimes I am like, did I just say that in Spanish or English? It's so mixed up. The whole learning English to me was very traumatizing, if I may say. I'm the type of person that I'm so perfectionist. Any hint of me not getting there, it's a struggle. And then I feel like, oh my God, I'm doing so poor on this and I might as well not even try. So that's just a struggle on a lot of things that I do. For me, it was, oh, I got to speak it right. I got to speak it with no accent. Learning a language for me, I don't think it's as easy as other things. Some people have just a talent to learn, pick up, they speak 3, 5 languages. I grew up between Washington, D.C. and California. The two coasts culturally is so different. So going to school here in California was easy because a lot of them were Latinos. So I didn't have to really speak English. But when we would go to McDonald's, then my dad would want me to order a McDonald's and I didn't even know how to do it or I was afraid to do it. So I remember one time he got so mad at me because I wouldn't order for him. All of the English that he learns is just from the street, from working, words here and there that they pick up. I am here taking formally, English classes. And yeah, I don't want to order because I'm so embarrassed to say the
Yeah.
wrong thing. And in DC, especially the school that I went to, I was the only Latina in each class. In the whole school, maybe there were maybe two. So nobody spoke Spanish. And then I was forced to speak English. It was very hard for me to socialize then because I was, again, so self conscious about my accent. But in a way, it forced me. It forced me to speak it. It always felt like every time I went to DC, people talk so fast. And I'm like, wait, slow down because I don't understand. And then I would come here to California and it was so slow. So I had to mentally adjust myself.
I remember when I met you in DC when you were a kid in like 91, 92. DC had its own lingo and culture at that time, but you did well.
Well, I survived. I think if there's one thing that I do well is to survive.
The thing that I want people to hear is what you said, Marisol, is like so encouraging and how resilient you were. You know, there's a lot of children right now in the Ukraine that are like experiencing what you experienced. And it kind of gives us a little insight on what they may be going through and some of the things that may be helping as many are refugees now and in that terrible situation. You're an example of how people can come through it. And that transition for you to become this adult who got into the banking industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I like for people to see what they can become. And this little person who is now a big adult didn't speak English at one time. What happened? How did we get there?
Well, I think coming from a third world country and seeing what my parents had to do, that they had to leave us behind. I mean, as a mom now, would I let my 13-year-old son travel by himself to another country for a better future? I'll say, oh, heck no. There's no way I can do that for his safety. But to the point that my parents took that decision, it was because there was no other option. So in my head, it was always about, well, now I am in this country that gives you so many opportunities that it's almost like a given. I'm going to school. Even before I graduated from high school, I started working just because I felt like I needed to help my mom. She was working, I mean, a maid at a hotel, cleaning rooms. That was hard for her, trying to support me and her new family. It was a given for me that I needed to start working and start doing something to help my mom. And I remember the first check that I officially received from that part-time job. She didn't even have to ask me. I just felt like it was my moral obligation to help her with rent. So I cashed the check and gave her half of my earnings. It was a little bit different for me because my parents being separated, one being in California and my mom being in DC, was always the back and forth. So I think I kind of missed some things that I would have done for a career. But in a way, looking back, I mean, I am doing what I love right now, which is mortgages. I've been in the banking finance industry since 2004. My first job in DC was State Farms, an insurance company. From there, I kind of learned about taxes somehow and accounting. So then I went into taking a course for taxes, and I wanted to start preparing taxes and be my own agent and have my own office. But that's when I moved to California. And then the season had already passed where, if you didn't get in during tax season, then you have to wait a whole year. And then somehow here I got into banking, and then that just gave me the experience, and it just kind of led me into learning things within the banking industry that now, I'm doing home loans. I feel for me it was always giving back to my parents and supporting myself, and mainly supporting myself because our parents, I mean, Latino parents, they're barely making it, right? If they pass or whatnot, I mean, they're not going to be leaving us, an inheritance. They're not going to be like, here, here's a home that it's paid off. It's for you. No, I mean, if anything, the mentality for a lot of Latinos is like, okay, well, when I get older, you're going to support me. So, in my head, it's like, okay, well, now I need to buy the house for my mom. Now I'm the one. It's my job to support my elderly parents because, it's not in our culture to say, they'll go to a nursing home or they'll go to an assisted living home. It's our job to say, she's going to come home live with me. I was blessed to be put in a position in a field where I learned a lot with the work experience, and it got me where I'm at now.
You're really to be congratulated for what you did there. That's really amazing. I think that's a good example for many others. A lot of the jobs that you can aspire to, there's a journey you can take and you can kind of mold it to your interests. And that seems to be what you did to your success. That's really good.
Well, I'm still working on my success, but
Hey, well, as a plug, where do you do loans? Because we want some people who are listening to this to be able to know that Marisol, which we know you go by your first name, Gloria, in your
Gloria.
business,
Hmm.
Gloria Melendez,
Hmm.
where are you working out of with those home loans?
So I am currently at a local credit union in California, and we are based out of Northern California. And this is interesting. This is kind of like a new phase for me because mainly I've been working at a big banks, and now I'm in the credit union. This is new for me because there's a lot of people that don't know about credit unions. They're local
Mm.
credit unions. They don't know the difference. They're always asking, what is the difference between a big bank and a credit union? Right now, with the instability with the banks and people being worried about, what's going to happen, their retirement accounts and all that. I have to say, with a credit union, you're a little bit, it's a community. So, and they keep things more conservative. So I feel that it is the best place to be at right now for me. We look at the bigger picture, and the members are pretty happy.
So,
Mhm.
as we're rounding out, Marisol, I want people to know about your passion for animal rescue. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why we should be interested?
If there is one thing that people know about me is that I love animals. At some point, I consider becoming a vegan, and just not because of health reasons, but it's just, when you learn about how animals are treated, it's pretty sad. So I've been fostering about a year and a half now. And I started because I wanted to adopt a dog for myself. I did have a dog in the past, and he was going to be euthanized at a shelter. And someone posted a video about him and said, urgent, it's going to be euthanized. I saw the video and my heart just went out to him because all I saw was, this dog is a nice dog, full of life. Why is he going to be killed? So I went and got him out of the shelter. Circumstances change for me, just like a lot of people when they adopt, things happen. And then I unfortunately had to rehome him, which I found a really good home for him. Till this day, they send me pictures of him and I keep in contact. I have seen him after that. So, I know he's really happy, and that makes me very happy.
Does he recognize you?
Well, you know what? When I saw him after I rehomed him, I was kind of disappointed because I was expecting that, oh my God, where have you been? I want to go home with you. It took him about 10 minutes to really know who I was. And I was like, oh my God, you traitor. But at the same time, the fact that he kept looking for his new mom, it just gave me a sense of peace because it felt like, okay, he is home and he is well taken care of. And that just made me really happy because it was heartbreaking for me to have to let go of him. Now that I have different circumstances and I've been wanting to adopt, I have a 5-year-old now and I want him to have a dog and grow up together. It's a little bit tricky because I do, just like everybody else, I think you think about what is the right dog to bring in, that it's going to be a nice dog and that you're not going to have an accident happen and whatnot. So I started with the idea of adopting. I started following this local rescue group. They posted about a girl that had a broken hip and a broken leg, and she had been dumped at a shelter. So she needed a place to heal. And I offered to bring her in, and I had her for 2 months. I helped her get, just rest and just healing her up. And then, I mean, at first when she got to my place, she couldn't even put one of their legs down. She was limping. And by the time she got adopted, I mean, that dog was running. So, and he was a transformed dog. And that gave me, I mean, when she got adopted, I cried because, she became my baby. To see that transformation that this dog, had when it first came in, she was sad. She was heart, just, we don't know the story. Maybe the owner surrendered her. A lot of these dogs in the shelter, you don't know the stories. And unfortunately, right now, it is a crisis. All the shelters, and this is across the country, they are flooded with dogs, with puppies that daily dogs are being euthanized, even good dogs, dogs that don't have issues, but they just need to make space for dogs that are being picked up, stray dogs, or people surrendering them, or just being dumped on the streets. A lot of these local rescues, they depend on independent people that can offer their homes to foster. We don't gain anything from it. The rescues don't gain anything from it. You give of your time and your love to these animals, and are based on donations. And so I've been doing that. I've had about now 8 dogs, or 8 or 9, that I've had the honor of having them in my home and seeing them get adopted. I've had everything from puppies to older dogs, senior dogs. It's not just about the saving the dog, but also the families adopting these dogs because they want them. To
Mhm.
see the matchmaking, it's so incredible. And people say it all the time, oh, it would be so hard for me to foster because I would want to keep them all. And that is true. Every single dog I've had, I wanted to keep it. But to know that you can, find a good home, and it's someone that is looking for that dog. I mean, I've had adopters that they still text me and they keep me up to date with the dogs, and they tell me, how happy they are. There's one teacher that she had lost her dog, and she's single. There's no kids, and it's just her. And she had this void, in her life. And she had gone through things that, she didn't share specifically what, but she was sad. She adopted one of the fosters I had. I mean, she has texted me and said, "This has been a blessing for me. She has brought in happiness to our home." And to hear that is amazing. So you're not just helping the dogs, but you are sort of helping people. I don't know if in the East Coast it happened, but I remember during COVID hearing the news that all the shelters were, clear. There were no dogs. So these people were working from home. So they wanted a companion. They wanted dogs, right? Well, guess what happened now that people are going to work full time? These dogs, unfortunately, are being returned to the shelters. A lot of the dogs were not spayed and neutered. They've had litters of puppies that people don't know how to handle puppies. And now these puppies are being dumped. It's a lot of work emotionally. The ones that are running these rescues, they really put their heart and soul into this. And it's very heartbreaking, a lot of the stories of these dogs. So I do not even one pinch of what they do.
It's like such a privilege to recircle back with you. I've known you now like 33 years, 32 years or something, and you've just been
Gosh, we are
amazing.
old.
No, you're only 35. I don't know how
Oh yeah,
you.
that's right. I'm 30.
I'm the old person. You stopped. I kept going. But we're so glad that you could spend this time, and I hope that those who are listening to this, I mean, they're going to see, hey, resilience. You could be resilient just like you, and you're getting stuff done. So I commend you.
Thank you.